as an actor, you're looking for something, outside the line, and that just really, it had everything. It was raw, it was edgy, it was like, it went places that you're like, well, they really won't do this, or even if they shoot the pilot, I doubt they'll pick it up because it's probably a little too controversial, and they did. So, for me, it was like God sent, you don't get to do a show like that, ever normally, and so we were like the little engine that could. I mean, originally they had 2 shows that they had made. It was ours and another show with some guy from 90210, I forget his name, but apparently it was like a lawyer show, and it tested really, really high. Like, it tested like in the, let's say out of 100%, it was in the 90 percentile, and ours tested about the same. And so they didn't know what to do, and Peter Liguori, who was the CEO at the time, he had been with FX for a while, and he basically went out on a limb and said, I'm taking the Shield. And then his boss, Murdoch, from what I know from what Peter told me, or I'm pretty sure it was Murdoch, but whoever said to him, if this goes out there and it fails, or it gets all this backlash and it completely bombs, your job's on the line. So this guy went with it, and thank God, because it not only started, it blew him up into this like guy that everybody wanted to hire after that, as well as the president at the time was Kevin Riley, who now is the head of Fox. And everyone that touched that show has gone on to do amazing things. So it was like, thank God somebody took a chance and said, well, we're willing to take that chance. And like you say, back then it was really controversial. I mean, it was hugely controversial when it came out. So yeah, I mean, thank God. I had no reservations whatsoever.
Was there a lot of room for improvising dialogue on the show, or did you have to kind of mainly stick to the script?
At the beginning, I think Walton and I thought there was a lot of we would improvise in and out of scenes at the beginning, the first season, like the first 4 episodes, and then Sean had a big meeting with everybody, and he just sort of semi-chewed us out, going like, we spent all this time to write this, and we want every word said the way we wrote it. Some of you going off improvising and doing all this stuff, and we work so many hours that this is exactly what we want. We don't want any right? So then, everybody's looking at each other. Walt and I are looking at each other like, I wonder if he's talking about us. So when they broke, I sort of followed Sean, and I said, does that have anything to do with me and Walt? And he goes, yes, it has everything to do with you and Walt. And that's who I'm talking about. I'm like, well, you should have just told us instead of like bitching everybody out, So anyways, at the beginning we stuck to it, but then once I think the second, third year came around, there was a little improvising that they would let go on. I mean, every time there was a bust, or we were getting into shit like chasing people down and screaming, and a lot of that it was improvised, or like, punk ass bitch. I mean, I made that stuff up all the time. I just whatever it was, I would just go off. I thought, okay, my character, this is what I'm going to say, and nothing's written there. It's basically described. Okay, they pull up, they pull their guns, they run up, and they throw these guys against the wall. So in that, we just start improvising a lot of that. Sometimes it was written, but a lot of times we would just improvise the living crap out of it.
How did you approach the character? Because when I interviewed Walton, he's got a kind of a method actor thing to him where he has to get himself into that mode. Do you do anything like that, or do you just go straight into it?
Man, I mean, I studied so many articles about, Rampart, about gangs. I probably had, 400 or 500 pages at least of my own history that I built. Like, I do that with every character. Like, I will create a life from time he's born to the time where he is in his life right now, and every possible, point of view from this guy and why. And so I will do as much of that as I can leading up to shooting the thing. And then from that point, I throw all that history away and try then to let the history work through the dialogue and in my relationships with everybody. And every night on the Shield, I would come home and I would probably write like 12 to 15 pages of like my mind, just kind of freebasing my thoughts as the character. and that kind of would make me live in that character and kind of think like that character a lot. So then the next day going into it, I've already had this life of not only shooting like the day before, but that night also venting all my feelings without monitoring anything as that character, whatever it is. And I would really go out, in places that were whatever, sometimes dark, sometimes disturbing, sometimes angry, sometimes whatever, but I would vent as that character. And then the next day I would go into work and, again, be that character. And I think the material dictates, where you need to be in a mindset. So like Walton is like completely correct. Like if there's a specific place you need to be emotionally in that character, you definitely have to dive into it that much more and kind of, well, for me, and I think I'm not going to speak for him, but kind of isolate yourself from people and be able to breathe that mindset, without being really disturbed.
I know Michael Chiklis snaps in and out of it, so one minute he could be joking around and the next minute he's actually in the scene as Vic Mackey. Can you do that? I mean, can you just snap in and out of it?
I wish I could. I can't. I'm miserable. I'm miserable at home. My wife is miserable. I go places, everyone's like, you look like shit, and I'm like, thanks, man. Until I come out. I mean, I did a whole season of Saving Grace about just being practically, suicidal about my brother's, my brother dying, and I just remember, like, everyone, the crew normally, like, I get along great with them, but when I go into these places, I just have to be in that mindset. And then about 3 weeks later, when I finally come out of it, everyone says, it's nice to have you back, Kenny. And I didn't even realize I was gone, but you check out. I mean, Michael, dude, he's real. He'll be making jokes, and they're like rolling sound, and he's still joking and talking like, like whatever. And then he turns and he's like Vic Mackey, but he's 1,000% Vic Mackey, and you're like, I don't know how he does that, but I can't do that,
How beneficial was it as an actor to work, have regular scenes with a lot of guest stars that came on, the big one being Forest Whitaker, obviously, who just blew it out of the water, man. He was amazing. And you had so many great scenes with him. I mean, one of my favorite scenes was the one where you actually get arrested, and it's such a powerful, emotional scene. Working with a guy like Forest Whitaker, or any guest actor for that matter, how do you approach that? I mean, because it must just be an amazing experience.
Yeah. No, I mean, Forrest has always been one of, the guys that I've always admired and loved his, I just loved his work. I mean, for me, I had the, same thing when Glenn Close came on, but with Forrest especially, he came on to try to bust Vic Mackey, and he's going to do it through going after one of his guys, which was me with the kilo of heroin or whatever. I had 5 years or 4 years leading up to it of a history of this guy. So, as intimidating as it can be working with somebody that's great, for me, I just had to stick to what my history was, and knowing that I knew that much more over him and that I now had to play both sides. And so it's like almost like I had 4 or 5 years of homework to do before I got to do my scenes with him. So it made me feel like a little more, like I wasn't going to be horrible with him, because again, I just know he's amazing and think he's amazing. But starting to work with Forrest, he was so giving, you know what I mean? Every time I did a scene, if I would, put my head down, or I would hold my, head thinking for a minute, he'd come over and he goes, like, what do you need? What do you need me to do? Can I do something to give you more? Did I not give you enough? Like, he was always trying to look out for you to make you better. And I just so love that. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, he, so unpredictable and so full of life, that guy. But he was also incredibly sensitive and giving to me as an actor opposite of him, and all he wanted to do is make it a great experience for me. So I don't know, man. It was amazing. I mean, it was amazing. I don't know how you prepare for it. I mean, basically, you just have to come in and have a little bit of confidence in what you do in order to work opposite of somebody like him or Glenn Close, because they are that good,
Yeah. Was it different though? Because was it not that Forest Whitaker actually came on, and I think Michael Chiklis has kind of discussed this. I'm not entirely sure, but he was saying that like Forest Whitaker and Michael Chiklis, because their characters were such rivals, that they really didn't socialize offset in order to keep that intensity. You kind of had that same intensity with Forest Whitaker. So did you socialize with him, or was it kind of like let's keep the intensity and try and, I guess, not socialize?